With the Super Bowl over, we are full-fledged focused on the NFL draft. And the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock with a new head coach in Andy Reid. And Eric, the big question, what's next for the Chiefs? Who are they going to draft with that first overall pick?
Well, I take you back to 1999, and it's remarkable the comparisons between the 99 Philadelphia Eagles, which Reid took over after a stint in Green Bay, and the 2013 Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, there was talent on both teams, but obviously very big questions at the quarterback position, and I think that's exactly what you're looking at here in KC. Now, no idea what direction they're going to go, so you start with quarterback, and you look back to the past, and Reid went with a somewhat surprising candidate with the second pick in the draft in Donovan McNabb. At this point, back in '99, nobody saw McNabb as a top 5 pick. He was viewed as somewhat of a project, maybe a lower first-round pick, and it's amazing how the draft process can kind of meet these guys out. If you match the skill set with the right head coach and his offense, you could have a match. However, as we've talked about in previous videos and off camera, this quarterback class has a lot of unknowns. We don't see that Andrew Luck or Robert Griffin or Cam Newton type of guy. So there are concerns about whether there is the right prospect to fit them at number 1.
Well, for most people, they consider the number 1 overall prospect to be Luke Joeckel, the offensive tackle out of Texas A&M. And the Chiefs certainly could use a left tackle for the future. It would certainly help, and it's a thing that a lot of teams want. With that number 1 pick and with so many things, and you mentioned the quarterback, is that a player that you could see them taking at that pick?
Yeah, the problem is that it sort of replaces something that they already consider somewhat of a strength. Now, Brandon Albert is a free agent. They may not be able to afford him, may have to watch him walk. They may view him, and who knows what Reid's thinking on this is, as more of a left guard candidate. Now, Albert himself has said, I'm a left tackle. He obviously wants left tackle money. The team and he have exchanged ideas about a contract, but nothing has happened yet to this point. So you could draft Joeckel. You've got Eric Winston at right tackle. You've got a third tackle in Donald Stevenson. That would probably be a pretty good strength, but it was somewhat of a strength, relatively speaking, last season. So, there are some questions about whether Joeckel really would upgrade the team all that much.
And they don't need a running back. They got Jamal Charles.
Right.
Wide receiver certainly a question mark, but there's definitely not a number 1 pick wide receiver in
Correct.
this class, which brings me to the last question, the trade possibility. Long times we've seen the number 1 pick be traded, but in this type of draft, when you look at what the Chiefs have and you talk about the quarterback class, could you see Andy Reid trading that number 1 pick?
Well, this draft and this scenario kind of reminds me of 2008. I know I took you back to '99 earlier. I'm going to take a little shorter history lesson here. When the Miami Dolphins had the number 1 pick, terrible team this season before, 1-15. They faced a similar dilemma. There was no franchise quarterback. Chiefs are okay at pass rusher, so there's really not that one guy who perfectly fits. What did Bill Parcells do? He took Jake Long. Was it a sexy pick? No, but it was an effective one. It was one that filled a spot that he could play right away at. And I think that's probably what happens. Is there a team willing to trade up for a good but not a great player in Luke Joeckel? I don't know. I just don't think the market's going to be there. I think they stick at number 1 out of need, and they end up taking who they feel is the best player available, whether it's Joeckel, maybe somebody like Ryan Nassib. I don't think it's going to be Geno Smith. That's just my gut feeling at this point. So it's either going to be a quarterback or perhaps a defensive or offensive lineman.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about this Kansas City Chiefs team. Yes, they were the worst team in the NFL last year, but that's a team that's got talented young players. Talk about Charles. Look at Eric Berry.
6 Pro Bowlers. How does that even happen for a team that wins 2 games?
Exactly. Derek Johnson, Tom Ali, and then they get Andy Reid, who, yes, he's a retread, but talk about a guy who's one of the most well-respected coaches in the entire NFL taking over that team. So they have the needs. They have that number 1 pick. Just unfortunately for Andy Reid and John Dorsey, the new GM, there's not a clear-cut top guy there.
I was talking to Winston down at the Super Bowl last week, and he's their right tackle, one of their leaders. He said, listen, everybody thinks we need a quarterback, but we've got to play better around the quarterback. We've got a lot of talent on this team, and we know that a quick turnaround is possible if we just get the right pieces in there. He really thinks they're going to be a much, much better team last year. He doesn't even know who his QB is going to be yet.
Well, they have Matt Castle and Brady Quinn, and maybe could have taken a different direction than Ricky Stanzi when they drafted a quarterback a couple of years ago, but we'll have to wait and see who they draft number 1. Probably won't know until the night of the draft and Thursday night in April. Who do you think the Chiefs should draft number 1 overall in April? Let us know on our YouTube page and head to our website at ProFootballWeekly.com.